There are phases in life when you suddenly become aware of how much of yourself you have given away without even noticing. You adjusted your tone, softened your reactions, explained your intentions again and again, and waited for someone to recognize effort that should have been obvious. And in that process, you slowly drifted away from your own center. You stopped listening to your instincts. You forgot your worth. You learned to manage someone else's comfort instead of protecting your own peace. But clarity has a strange way of returning. It never arrives loudly, never in a dramatic moment. It comes quietly, often in the middle of an ordinary day, when you realize you are tired of trying to be understood. That quiet realization is the beginning of a different kind of strength, a strength that doesn't shout, doesn't beg, doesn't negotiate. A strength that moves through silence. Silent attitudes are not about manipulation. They are not about disappearing to provoke fear or becoming cold to create artificial distance. They are rooted in something much deeper, restoring the weight of your presence. People sense when you stop over-explaining yourself. They sense when you stop rushing to fix misunderstandings that were never your fault. They sense when you stop abandoning your priorities to fit into someone else's convenience. That shift, even without words, reshapes every dynamic around you. The first silent attitude that subtly transforms how people behave toward you is anchoring yourself in your own clarity. Most people live in a reactive state, responding instantly to messages, trying to soften up tension, offering explanations at the slightest sign of discomfort. Not because they want to, but because they fear what will happen if they don't. And that fear becomes a habit. A habit of overgiving. A habit of performing emotional work no one asked for. A habit of trying to prevent every possible misinterpretation. Anchored clarity breaks that cycle. Instead of rushing to clarify what you meant, you allow your actions to speak. Instead of defending every choice, you stand by it. Instead of chasing reassurance, you choose composure. People often equate silence with uncertainty, but the truth is that silence paired with certainty is one of the most powerful signals you can project. When you respond from clarity, not urgency, your entire energy shifts. You no longer jump to fill every conversational gap. You no longer bend your boundaries to avoid tension. You no longer apologize for things that aren't yours to carry. And without realizing it, you begin communicating something unspoken. I am not here to convince you. I am here to live truthfully, whether you understand me or not. This attitude creates a revealing effect. When you stop offering explanations at every turn, people show their true level of interest. Those who relied on your emotional labor suddenly have to meet you halfway. Those who were used to your predictability begin to feel uncertain. Those who undervalued your presence start to question what has changed. And this questioning is the beginning of pursuit. Not because you asked for it, but because you stopped making yourself easy to interpret. Anchored clarity also protects you from internal chaos. When you resist the urge to respond impulsively, you give yourself space to observe what's actually happening. You notice patterns more clearly. You recognize emotional manipulation more quickly. You perceive inconsistencies that were blurred by your need to maintain harmony. And the more clearly you see, the more naturally you detach from dynamics that never deserved your emotional investment in the first place. People are drawn to those who move with intention. People respect those who don't scramble for approval. People become intrigued by those who don't feel the need to over-explain themselves. This is why anchored clarity becomes magnetic. It shifts the balance without you having to lift a finger. And the most interesting part, this first silent attitude is just the beginning. It prepares the ground for a transformation that doesn't need confrontation, volume, or force, only awareness. Once clarity becomes your foundation, every interaction begins to reorganize itself around your presence rather than your fear. And that alone is enough to make anyone rethink how they show up for you. Before we continue, I want to ask for your support. If this message helps you understand your inner world more clearly or reveals something about the way you've been giving your energy to the wrong people, I invite you to like this video so that it reaches others who need the same clarity. I also encourage you to subscribe to the channel so you can receive more grounded insights on emotional strength, Stoic wisdom, and the type of mindset that protects your peace. And if you feel comfortable, share in the comments what silent shift you are ready to make in your own life. Your reflection may be exactly what someone else needs to read today. The second silent attitude that completely changes how others perceive you is cultivating a calm that cannot be shaken by external pressure. Most people believe calmness is something soft, passive, or even weak. But real calm, the kind that comes from self-awareness and emotional discipline, is one of the strongest signals of inner authority a person can project. There is a difference between reacting slowly because you are unsure and responding slowly because you choose to. One communicates confusion. The other communicates control. When you begin to cultivate intentional calm, you break one of the psychological patterns that often trap you in draining connections. The expectation that you must respond immediately, explain instantly, or absorb the emotional tension of the moment. Your calm disrupts this rhythm. It interrupts the dynamic that allows others to dictate your emotional tempo. It shows that your state of mind is not something people can manipulate with urgency, tone, or silence. People who benefit from your emotional immediacy will notice this shift faster than anyone. They may even become irritated or confused, because your calm becomes a mirror that reflects their lack of it. When you no longer rush to soothe, fix, or justify, the responsibility returns to where it belongs, to the person who created the tension in the first place. Calmness is silent accountability. It makes others carry their own emotional weight instead of handing it to you. This kind of calm is not about pretending everything is fine. It's about refusing to let chaos pull you out of yourself. You breathe before responding. You observe before assuming. You feel before reacting. And this slows the pace of interaction in a way that reveals the truth. When you are calm, you can finally see what you could not see when you were operating from anxiety. Who respects your boundaries, who only respects your availability, who uses urgency as control, and who genuinely cares for your well-being. Calmness also changes your internal dialogue. Instead of thinking, "I must respond or they will misunderstand me," your mindset becomes, "I will respond when I am centered enough to speak wisely." Instead of worrying about disappointing others, you begin to consider whether they are disappointing you. It's a quiet shift, but it realigns your entire sense of worth. When you no longer fear someone's reaction, you stop shaping your life around their expectations. This natural calmness becomes magnetic for one simple reason. People crave what they cannot control. A person who remains composed, thoughtful, and deliberate is intriguing because emotional self-possession is rare. Most people operate from impulse. When you don't, you stand out. And not because you are performing a role, but because your energy communicates something unmistakable. I belong to myself now. But perhaps the most interesting part of this silent attitude is the paradox it creates. When you stop being driven by fear, the other person may begin to feel fear. Not fear of you, but fear of losing the access they once had to your emotional world. They sense that the dynamic has shifted. They feel the absence of your anxiety. They notice that your reactions no longer revolve around them. And this absence becomes a pull, a gravitational shift that makes them move toward you instead of away. Calmness rebalances power without conflict. It creates distance without withdrawal. It invites respect without demanding it. And most importantly, it protects you from the noise that once consumed your emotional energy. When you operate from calm, you no longer try to outrun someone's disappointment or anxiety. You let people feel what they feel. And in doing so, you let your life move at your own pace, not theirs. This silent transformation lays the foundation for something even deeper, a way of showing up in the world that cannot be controlled, shaken, or manipulated. And once you step into this version of yourself, everything around you begins to shift accordingly, including the people who suddenly realize they can no longer take your presence for granted. One of the most powerful silent attitudes you can adopt is the decision to grow without announcing it, proving it, or showcasing it for validation. Most people talk about their transformation long before it becomes real. They describe their plans, outline their expectations, and narrate their evolution as if speaking about it were part of the change itself. But the truth is that real growth doesn't need narration. It needs discipline, solitude, repetition, and time. And when you grow quietly, your progress becomes harder to ignore. Not because you are trying to make a statement, but because the change becomes undeniable. Quiet growth begins with something simple: redirecting your energy back to yourself. You stop expecting others to notice your effort. You stop waiting for someone to acknowledge your improvement. You stop depending on external encouragement to take the next step. Instead, you wake up and build your life in small, consistent actions that no one sees. Changes in attitude, thought patterns, habits, boundaries, and direction. Silent improvement is not glamorous, but it is the kind that lasts. This kind of growth has a distinct psychological impact on the people around you. While dramatic announcements fade quickly, silent consistency creates contrast. Someone who saw you last month may look at you now and wonder what shifted. Your behavior becomes steadier, your words become more intentional, and your reactions become less tied to old wounds. People who once understood exactly how to trigger you suddenly find that their old methods no longer work. And they notice, not because you explained it, but because they can feel the difference. Quiet growth also exposes relationships that relied on your stagnation. There are people who felt powerful because you doubted yourself. People who felt needed because you were constantly seeking reassurance. People who felt secure because you were predictable in your insecurities. When you evolve past that version of yourself, they lose their emotional leverage. And nothing reveals the truth about a relationship faster than the moment you stop fitting into the role someone built around you. At the same time, this evolution attracts those who value authenticity. People who are also growing, people who invest in themselves, people who appreciate the discipline of becoming better. They recognize quiet progress immediately. It feels familiar. It feels safe. It feels like alignment. As a result, your social circle begins to reorganize naturally. Some individuals drift away without conflict. Others return with renewed respect. And in the middle of this movement, you begin to understand that your growth was never meant to please or punish anyone. It was simply meant to free you. Another important aspect of growing in silence is that it stabilizes your self-perception. When you talk too much about what you plan to become, you risk creating pressure or expectations that sabotage your progress. You start performing the idea of growth instead of actually growing. But when you move without explaining, you give yourself permission to evolve imperfectly, slowly or privately. You stop performing for an audience and begin living for yourself. The transformation becomes intimate. It becomes yours. This shift does something powerful inside you. It cuts the attachment to being understood. You no longer need people to see your effort to validate it. You no longer need applause to maintain motivation. You no longer crumble when someone doubts your potential. Instead, your motivation becomes anchored in who you are becoming, not in who is watching. And that internal foundation makes your progress far more stable. Quiet growth also strengthens your intuition. When you remove the noise of external opinions, you can finally hear your own voice. You can sense what needs to change, what habits no longer fit, what emotional patterns must die for you to move forward. You become more honest with yourself, more selective, more grounded, and that groundedness becomes visible to anyone who interacts with you. But perhaps the most compelling part of this silent attitude is the narrative shift it creates in the minds of others. Humans are naturally curious. When someone evolves without fanfare, it creates mystery. When someone becomes emotionally stronger without explanation, it creates intrigue. When someone who used to shrink now stands firmly, even without saying a word, it commands attention. People begin to wonder what changed, when it changed, and why they didn't notice sooner. That curiosity turns into pursuit, not because you intended to provoke it, but because you stopped living at a volume that made your growth predictable. At its core, silent transformation is not about outgrowing people. It's about outgrowing versions of yourself that kept you stuck. And when you commit to this form of growth, you naturally change the gravitational pull of your life. Those aligned with your new direction will move toward you. Those who depended on your old patterns will feel the distance. No explanation needed. Another silent attitude that dramatically shifts how people behave toward you is the decision to protect your availability. Not by blocking anyone out, not by pretending to be distant, but by choosing when and how you give your time and emotional presence. Most people don't realize how freely they hand out their attention, answering instantly, adjusting their schedule, responding to every demand, and offering comfort even when they themselves are depleted. This unconscious availability convinces others that you will always be there. And what is always there is rarely valued. Silent protection of your availability begins the moment you stop treating urgency as an invitation. You no longer interrupt your routine to respond to someone else's emotional turbulence. You no longer allow guilt or fear to override your priorities. You no longer feel compelled to fix situations that others created. Instead, you give yourself permission to pause, to think, to choose intentionally. You make space between someone else's request and your response. That space is where your self-respect lives. People feel this shift immediately. They may not articulate it, but they sense the difference in how you engage. You're not colder. You're simply not accessible on command. You're not withholding. You're just honoring your rhythm. You're not unavailable. You're selective. These distinctions matter because they redefine your role in every interaction. You are no longer the person who absorbs tension or repairs misunderstandings. You are someone whose time has value, and value always demands a different kind of treatment. Protecting your availability also reveals relational imbalances with surprising clarity. When you begin responding at your own pace instead of someone else's, you see who respects your boundaries and who resents them. You see who genuinely appreciates your presence and who merely relied on your convenience. You see who is willing to adjust and who expects you to remain endlessly accommodating. Without saying a word, you expose truths that were hidden beneath your eagerness to be helpful. This shift changes the tone of conversations as well. When you were always available, the interactions often lacked intention. Messages came without thought. Requests came without consideration. People reached for you out of habit, not out of sincerity. But once your availability becomes something earned rather than assumed, the tone matures. The communication becomes more respectful, more deliberate, more real. People choose their words more carefully because they understand that your attention has weight. Another powerful effect of guarding your availability is the emotional quiet it creates within you. When you stop living in response mode, your mind becomes calmer. You're no longer scanning for notifications or bracing for emotional demands. You rediscover space for your own thoughts, your own goals, your own needs. And as your inner world becomes more stable, your external behavior becomes more grounded. You stop bending yourself around others and begin building a life that aligns with your values. This inner shift also makes your presence more impactful. Ironically, you become more attractive, not because you are playing a game, but because you are not easily consumed. Scarcity increases perception of value, but this scarcity is not manufactured. It is simply the natural result of respecting your time. And people respect what you respect. If you treat your availability as abundant, others will waste it. If you treat it as precious, others will handle it with care. Protecting your availability also interrupts one of the most toxic patterns in relationships: dependency disguised as closeness. When you make yourself endlessly accessible, some people begin to rely on your emotional labor instead of doing their own. They lean on you for reassurance, for clarity, for guidance, for stability. But when you pull back just enough to reclaim your space, they must face themselves. Some do. Some don't. But either way, the responsibility returns to where it belongs. And perhaps the most revealing part of this attitude is what happens when you're no longer present in the way someone expects. Your absence, not as punishment, but as natural consequence, forces the other person to reassess their behavior. They may reach out more intentionally. They may increase their effort. They may realize they took your presence for granted. Or they may drift away, showing you that they were never truly invested. Both outcomes bring clarity. Both outcomes serve you. Guarding your availability is not about being unreachable. It's about being reachable in the right ways, by the right people, at the right time. It is about recognizing that your time is not a renewable resource. How you distribute it shapes the dynamics around you. When you give it without measure, you teach others that it costs nothing. When you give it with intention, you teach others that it is worth something. This silent attitude reorganizes the balance of power not through force, but through self-respect. And once you begin living this way, you become someone who is not taken for granted. You become someone others must choose actively rather than expect passively. You become someone who commands attention without asking for it, simply because you no longer hand yourself out freely. There is a quiet kind of strength that doesn't come from confrontation or certainty, but from the simple ability to step back when everything inside you wants to react. This step back is not avoidance. It is not withdrawal. It is not punishment. It is perspective. And perspective, when practiced intentionally, becomes one of the most transformative silent attitudes you can cultivate. Most people stay too close to situations that are draining them. They try to fix everything in real time. They stay emotionally entangled with people who confuse them. They respond immediately to things that deserve a pause. And without noticing, they lose sight of themselves inside the noise. The closer you stand to something that is hurting you, the harder it is to see it clearly. The small details look enormous. The temporary feels permanent. The insignificant becomes dramatic. This is why stepping back is essential. Not to escape, but to observe from a healthier distance. When you create this distance, even briefly, your perception changes. You begin to see patterns you couldn't see before. You notice who reaches out without needing anything in return, and who only calls when they want something. You notice which situations drain your energy and which ones restore it. You notice what you have been tolerating that no longer aligns with who you are becoming. This observational clarity is healing on its own, because it allows you to make decisions based on truth rather than emotional fog. Stepping back also reveals the real dynamics of interest. As long as you are always available, always responding, always present, it's impossible to know who values you and who merely uses you out of convenience. But when you take a quiet step back, not dramatically, not abruptly, simply with intention, the reactions speak volumes. Someone who truly cares will notice your silence and check in with genuine curiosity. Someone who only valued your availability will simply replace you with another source of attention. This distinction, though painful at times, is liberating. This shift also recalibrates your emotional boundaries. When you step back, you stop participating in cycles that exhaust you. You stop giving explanations that no one appreciates. You stop engaging in conversations that go nowhere. You stop trying to prove your worth in situations that cannot recognize it. And in that pause, your sense of self begins to return. You feel your own energy again. You hear your own thoughts again. You recognize your own needs again. Distance makes you visible to yourself. Quiet distancing also allows you to differentiate between emotional triggers and emotional truths. When you're too close, everything feels urgent. You assume the worst. You overthink. You take responsibility for things that were never yours. But when you step back, the urgency dissolves. You can finally separate what is real from what is fear, what is intention from what is projection, what is connection from what is attachment. This clarity prevents you from reacting impulsively or accepting situations that don't honor you. Another powerful outcome of stepping back is how it affects the other person. When your energy is no longer wrapped around them, they suddenly face the space you've been filling. They feel the absence of your reassurance, your attention, your emotional effort. And that absence forces a response. Some will pull away because they were only comfortable when you carried the relationship for both of you. Others will move toward you because your step back made them realize they were taking you for granted. Either way, the truth surfaces without you saying a word. This silent attitude also protects your long-term emotional health. Distance gives you time, and time reveals everything. Patterns, intentions, red flags, opportunities, strengths, self-deceptions. You begin to understand what was happening beneath the surface, not just what was happening in the moment. And once you understand, you no longer feel obligated to return to dynamics that do not match your worth. But above all, stepping back restores your sense of sovereignty. It reminds you that you do not have to stay in the center of someone else's chaos. You do not have to overextend yourself to maintain a connection. You do not have to sacrifice your peace to keep anyone comfortable. The space you create is not a wall. It is a doorway back to yourself. And when you walk through it, everything becomes clearer. Who deserves to be in your life, who never did, and who only shows up when they feel the distance. This is the paradox of quiet distance. The more you step back for the sake of your own clarity, the more others are drawn toward you. Not because you manipulated them, but because your silence revealed what your presence had been hiding. And once you experience the peace that comes from seeing clearly, you stop chasing explanations and start pursuing alignment. The final silent attitude, the one that binds all the others together, is the ability to move your life forward without hesitation, without explanation, and without waiting for someone to validate your next step. It is a quiet liberation, a moment when you stop letting uncertainty decide your pace and stop allowing attachment to decide your direction. This is not rebellion. It is not coldness. It is not a declaration of independence made out loud. It is a simple, steady decision to stop living in reaction to others and start living in alignment with yourself. Most people pause their growth because they are waiting for a sign that never comes. They wait for someone to return. They wait for someone to apologize. They wait for a gesture of reassurance, a signal of interest, or a moment of clarity. They wait because moving forward feels like giving up. They wait because they fear outgrowing someone they care about. They wait because they think advancing alone means losing something. But the truth is that waiting often becomes a cage, a silent place where your life stands still while time keeps moving. Choosing your direction without waiting is not a sudden sprint. It is a shift in posture. You stop asking, "What will they think?" and begin asking, "What do I need next?" You stop wondering whether someone will follow and begin focusing on whether the path feels right for you. This quiet movement forward alters the energy of every relationship you're in, because it removes the emotional leverage others once had. When your life is no longer paused for anyone, your value is perceived differently. More clearly, more seriously, and often more urgently. This attitude also dismantles one of the biggest illusions in relationships: the idea that you must stay available so the other person feels comfortable approaching you. But availability does not create connection. Growth does. Direction does. Purpose does. When people see you moving with intention, improving your environment, strengthening your discipline, embracing new habits, pursuing goals that once intimidated you, they feel something they never felt when you were stagnant: the fear of missing their moment with you. People are rarely drawn to those who wait for them. They are drawn to those who walk ahead. Not because distance creates desire, but because direction reveals value. When you move forward without apologies, you communicate something powerful. I am not afraid to live my life even if you choose not to be part of it. That message, even when unspoken, changes the emotional landscape completely. This silent attitude also creates a new relationship with uncertainty. You stop seeing it as a threat and start seeing it as a possibility. Instead of fearing what you might lose, you become curious about what you might gain. Instead of clinging to familiarity, you begin to trust your resilience. You realize that you have survived every ending that once terrified you, and that you can, in fact, survive much more. This confidence does not make you loud. It makes you steady. It makes you move. And when you move, others must make a choice. Either they step forward to match your direction, or they stay behind and reveal the truth of their intentions. No silent attitude creates more pursuit than this one. Not because you intend to provoke it, but because when you stop orbiting around someone's potential and start orbiting around your own purpose, the dynamic reverses itself. You are no longer the one adjusting your pace. You are the one setting it. People notice. People feel it. People react to it, whether they admit it or not. Some will respect your evolution and walk beside you with sincerity. Some will try to return once they realize you no longer stop when they hesitate. Some will attempt to regain control by pulling you backward. But you, anchored in your new direction, no longer negotiate with versions of yourself you have outgrown. This final silent attitude is not about chasing or abandoning anyone. It is about choosing yourself with a consistency that reshapes your entire life. And that choice, quiet as it is, creates a gravitational pull stronger than any strategy or effort. People are drawn to those who know where they are going. People are drawn to those who do not apologize for growing. People are drawn to those who refuse to shrink to remain familiar. And now, as we close this journey, I want to ask something from you. If this message brought clarity to your mind or helped you understand the power of silent strength, I invite you to like this video so that it reaches more people who need to reclaim their direction. I also encourage you to subscribe to the channel to continue receiving reflections that deepen your emotional resilience and sharpen your awareness. And if you feel called to share something personal, leave a comment telling us which silent attitude you believe will change your relationships the most. Your story may be the insight someone else has been waiting for to finally choose themselves.